Hi, welcome back to PSLE Math Heuristic lessons. Now today we are going to continue with our model drawing on before and after. So this will be our part 3. So when you come across before and after problems, there'll be some scenarios that you have to think about. So is it a total unchanged scenario? Is it a one group unchanged, or is it the difference unchanged, or everything changes? So for today's lesson, we are going to look at two scenarios. We are going to look at total unchanged and also everything changes. So this is usually for primary 4, right? Primary 4 students, you will see many before and after problems. So you will have to think about these 4 scenarios. So today we will look at 2 of them. So let's look at the first one. Now, total unchanged. So when is there a total unchanged? When there is a transfer, internal transfer. If you see an internal transfer, then there is a total unchanged. So let's read the question and let's highlight. Alright, so there were 210 marbles in box A and box B all together. So this is your before statement, which means that how many marbles in box A and box B at the beginning. So when you have something like that, we call it before. And then what happens? Lydia transferred 10 marbles from box A to box B. So we call this the action that is taking place, or we call it the change. And as a result, in the end, the number of marbles in box B was 6 times the number of marbles in box A. So this is the after. So you have the before and the after. So how many marbles were there in box A at first? So this question is a before and after. So what do? We have to draw the before and after model. When you draw the model, you can actually combine the two models together as one, or you can have two separate model to represent the before model and the after model. Otherwise, you can also combine them together. But whether you combine or whether you separate them, they have their own advantages and disadvantages. So for today's lesson, we will separate them so that you can see more clearly. But because of that, you will find that you need to draw more things. Alright, so that is a disadvantage. So how do we draw the before model? So let's label. So this is the before model, and you have box A and you have box B. Now if you read the question number tells you which box has more marbles at first. So you may have to make a clever guess. If you continue reading, you can see that the marbles in box B was 6 times the marbles in box A. So which means that box B has quite a lot of marbles in the end. So maybe let's assume, okay, let's guess box B has more marbles at first, maybe. Because why do we do that? Because the question never really says which box have more marbles. So we can assume. But how you draw, whatever you draw, if you label correctly and properly, you will still be able to get the answer correct. So let's draw a rectangle for box B, which is a bit longer, and box A a little bit shorter, right? Something like that. Okay, so don't worry about the whether you're going to draw correctly or not, because if you draw wrongly later, you can always erase the drawing. On not everything, you just erase part of the drawing that is not correct, and then you just draw again. So when you draw, it's never perfect, so you may have to make adjustment later. So right now, we assume that maybe box B has more marbles. You can also assume that box A has more marbles. It's entirely up to you. Alright, so there were 210 marbles in box A and box B. So this is the total at the beginning. And then what happens? Lydia transferred 10 marbles from box A to box B. So you take out 10, right? Take out 10 marbles, and then you put where? Right? You cut to show that she transferred 10 marbles. You cut the rectangle for box A. You can see the 10 marbles inside the rectangle. It's still there. The marbles are still there, but not yet given. But so Lydia is going to take the 10 marbles and put into box B. So I'm going to show a dotted box, right? Something like that. So box B is going to receive the 10 marbles, but hasn't received yet. That's why it's a dotted box. And when you draw the after, okay, the after, how do you draw? You make use of a dotted line to help you to draw more accurately. So box A will have how many now? Box A will have lesser. So I'm going to draw a dotted line to show that I will draw the rectangle for box A until the dotted line. So dotted line has a few purpose. The first purpose is to help you to draw the rectangle until where. Alright, so this is why we make use of dotted lines. And box B, how many marbles in box B in the end? So we have to draw the rectangle until the dotted line. So that will be something like this. Okay, so now you can see that box A has lesser marbles in the end, and box B now has more marbles in the end. So you're drawn until here already. As a result, means in the end, the marbles in box B was 6 times the marbles in box A. You can cut the rectangle into 6 times if you like, okay? Or if you don't want, you can just put 6 units inside the model. Right? So when do we put 6 units and when do we cut? Now we put 6 units in the rectangle when we are not able to cut proportionally. We are not able to cut exactly into 6 equal boxes. Then you put the 6 unit inside the rectangle. But if you are able to cut, right? If you are able to cut proportionally, right? For example, in this model that you see, I can actually cut proportionally. So something like that. So I don't have to put a 6 unit inside the rectangle. So now every box will be 1 unit. And box A has 1 unit. Box B has 6 units or 6 times. Okay, so how many marbles were there in box A at first? So your question mark will be over here, right before you take out the 10 marbles from box A. So this is where you put the question mark and your model is done. So you have actually drawn out the whole problem. So this is called a before and after model. So when you draw a before and after model, there is something that you must always think about, what is unchanged, which is the total unchanged. So every time there's an internal transfer, you take out from box A, put into box B, it is internal, right? The action is taking place inside the problem, right? It's internal. So the total is unchanged, which means that in the end, there is still 210. So altogether, you have 210 marbles in both boxes in the end. And once you have put the total in the after model, you can actually see that all the units add together is 7 units, which is 210. So what's the lesson here? The lesson here is if you see a total, you can add up all the units, add up all the numbers inside the rectangles or the units inside the rectangle. So you have 7 units, which is 210, and then your 1 unit will be 210 divided by 7. So your 1 unit is 30. So if 1 unit is 30, I can actually do something like this. 1 unit is 30, and I actually work backwards and put the 30 inside. Now can I find the question mark? Yes, I can. So how many marbles in box A at first? 30 plus 10. So there must be 40 marbles in box A at first. And that's how I solve. Very easy. And if I want to find how many marbles in box B at first, then what do? I find how many is 6 units. So 6 units will be 30 times 6 because 1 unit is 30. So 30 times 6, and I will get 180 marbles in box B in the end. So box B has 180 marbles in the end. Then I work backwards. 180 minus 10, right? Minus 10, and I will get 170 marbles in box B at first. So the model helps you to visualize the problem, to see more clearly. So in this model drawing, you can see the two models are being separated. But can I join them together? Yes, you can actually join them together. But when you do that, then what happens? The model becomes a little bit more complicated. Alright, you have more things inside the same model, more things to look at. The model becomes very, there's a lot of things in the model, and you need to be careful when you look at the model that has these two models combined together. So you have to be careful when you study the model. So when you separate them, it is actually easier because you can see them clearly on its own. Right, before model looks like that, and the after model looks like that. Okay, so there are disadvantages and advantages, right? So when you join them together, of course you have less things to draw, but you have more things to look at. You have to look at it more carefully. Okay, let's look at example 2, and now we look at another scenario, which is everything changes. So what is everything changes? It means that there is a change in the numbers. Like for example, there were an equal number of boys and girls in the art club at first. Then another 17 boys joined the club. So what happened to the number of boys? At the beginning, there are so many boys. In the end, now you have more boys. So there's a change in the number of boys. Then 7 girls left the club. So there's also a change in the number of girls, right? Then how about the total? The total also changed, right? Because the total at the beginning and the total in the end have to be different. So the total has changed. So everything changes in this problem. Then in the end, there are 4 times as many boys as girls in the club now. So how many girls were there at first? and how many children were there at first. Alright, so this problem is the scenario is everything changes. So how do we draw the model? It's the same. So you have the before, okay, and you have the boys and you have the girls, and there was an equal number of boys and girls. So you have two rectangles of the same length. Then another 17 boys join. So what happened if I want to merge the model, if I want to put everything in one model? So how do I do it? This is how I will do it. Okay, so let's do it. Let me use a different color, and I'm going to put the after, okay, the after together with the before. So you have another 17 boys who join. So let me extend the rectangle a little bit. So this is your 17 boys who join. And then another 7 girls left the club. So this will be your 7 girls which left the club. Alright, so the 7 girls left the club. Right? And so now there were 4 times as many boys as girls. Alright, before we continue with the drawing, you need to know how the rectangle for the boys look like in the end. So the rectangle for the boys look like what? Okay, let me just undo the coloring so that it's easier to see. So this is the 17 boys who joined, and then this is the 7 girls who left the club. So in the end, the boys will be longer. Okay, the boys will have a longer rectangle like what you see now, and the girls will have a shorter rectangle. Okay, like what you see now. So the before model is the red color, okay, the red color that you saw at the beginning, and the after model is the blue color rectangles. So in the end, there were 4 times as many boys as girls. So I cannot cut into 4 boxes, so I put 4 units, and the girls will be 1 time. And the girls will be like this, 1 long box. So it's not proportional, but it doesn't matter because you're going to put the 1 unit inside the rectangle. Okay, so how many girls were there at first? So your question mark is to find here, how many girls at first, and how many children were there at first. So I would like to put the question mark over here, but I need to be very careful because this is a before and after. So are you looking at the total children at first or in the end? So I would like to put the question mark, and I want to put down something else at first. Means I want to find the total at first, so that I don't get confused and then go and find the total in the end. So you have to make sure that you know what you're finding and you don't get confused by what you are drawing. So the model is done already. And then so what do we do next? We look at the model to see whether we can solve it. And how do we solve it? It's actually not that hard. You cut the 1 unit above and below the same, and then above and below the same, 7. Right? And then immediately what do you see? You can see that because we don't have the total given, so we can't add everything in the boxes because there's no total given. So if you cannot plus, then you minus. So you look at the 4 units, and then you minus the 1 unit, and you will get 3 units over here. Right? So your 3 units will be how many? Your 3 units will be 7 plus 17. That will be 24, and then you can find 1 unit, which is 24 divided by 3, and your 1 unit is 8. And now can you find the part A? How many girls at first? Which is 1 unit plus 7. So there must be 8 plus 7. There must be 15 girls at first. Right? 15 girls at first. And then what's the total at first? Now, remember the question says there were an equal number of boys and girls. Right? Equal number of boys and girls at first. So if you have found 15 girls already, right? If there are 15 girls already, then there must be an equal number of boys also. So the total number of children at first is 30. So that's how you draw the model, by combining them together. Alright, now, but if you combine them together, what happens? Then the model becomes a little bit cluttered, a lot of things inside. So that's a disadvantage. But if you separate them, you have to draw more, right? There's more drawing, but it doesn't look so cluttered if you separate them. So you have 2 choices. It's either to have 2 separate model, before and after separately, or to have a combined model by putting the before and the after together as one. And also, if it's a before and after problem, you must always think about the scenario. So is it total unchanged, right? Total unchanged is when there's an internal transfer, right? And everything changes. So today we have looked at these two scenarios. So in the next few lessons, we will be looking at the other two scenarios, which is the difference unchanged and one group unchanged. So what's the homework? Okay, now, okay, so there's homework after the lesson for this model drawing. So your homework is to look at this. Okay, so look at this and see whether you can solve it on your own. So practice one. Alright, so try to draw out the problem. If you can't draw, it doesn't matter because the next video I will show you how to draw this problem. And then another one will be this one. Okay, so you're supposed to draw out this problem, but before you can draw, think about what is unchanged. Alright, because that will help you to later solve the problem. Okay, alright, so we are done with this part of the model drawing lesson. So stay tuned for part 4. So in the part 4 lessons, we will look at these two questions. Alright, so see you in the next model drawing lesson.